I don't think it was possible for me to be as wrong about my predictions for this league as I actually was. I'll be making a video talking about all of the stuff that we're getting. However, this video, as is tradition, is me explaining the patch notes to you immediately after the stream ends so that you can understand what's going on. Patch notes are pretty much everything when it comes to league starts, and this time is no different. There is a lot to go over here, so I'm going to attempt to condense these as best as I can and get you the information that you're looking for. The Affliction Challenge League. This league looks really cool. I'll make a video talking about all the new cool stuff, so we're not going to do anything here. Ultimatum is back and it is replacing Metamorph. I didn't really like Metamorph to begin with. Ultimatum is way cooler. Glad that this is happening. There's a lot of changes that are happening with Ultimatum here. There's a bunch of stuff having to do with like the different stuff that's on the Atlas tree. However, I feel that that's going to be a little bit better digestible when we have the full Atlas tree available. So let's talk about the basic changes. Ultimatum is replacing Metamorph. So you've got the basic 8% chance for it to show up in maps. Now the Ultimatum encounters are 10 rounds by default, and you now have a chance to be teleported to the Trial Masters Arena for the 10th one, instead of it being guaranteed if you manage to get 10. They've rebalanced the difficulty of a bunch of these, like the monsters, the loot, all that kind of stuff. The monsters themselves no longer drop a lot of loot, but apparently they do give a lot of experience, so this may be a good way to level up your character. For pretty much anything that Metamorph did give us previously, it should be available here in Ultimatum now, as well as a new Tainted Catalyst, which is going to make it so that corrupted items now can get quality. This is a huge good change because now you can give quality to things like talismans and stuff like that, which is pretty solid. We also have got some kind of new unique jewel from the Ultimatum aspects now. I don't exactly know what this is going to be, but maybe it'll be cool. One big thing about Ultimatum and Metamorph is that Metamorph did have a stash tab. That stash tab is being directly converted into an Ultimatum tab. Should be pretty seamless. The Ultimatum is just kind of Ultimatum. You're going to go in, you're going to fight a whole bunch of rounds of monsters, and you're going to get some loot. Should be pretty fun. If Ultimatum does end up being pretty good, I'll probably put a video talking about this particular mechanic later once we get some better information on it. However, most of these passives look pretty cool. They give like extra experience and make the rounds more difficult and give you more, you know, just items and stuff from it. So Ultimatum, very happy to have it back. Let's hope that it ends up being a good amount of loot. Now, as said previously, Metamorph has been pretty much completely removed, and on top of that, Astral Projector, Fury Valve, Mother's Embrace, and Warrior's Legacy are now in the core drop pool, which is super nice. Other than that, there's one big change to Delirium Fog that's actually pretty impactful. If you've ever noticed when you're like trying to rush through a map and the Delirium Fog doesn't keep up with you, and you start like a Legion or something like that, and you have to be real careful to not walk out of the fog, no longer the issue now. That has been fixed, which is really, really good if you do any like Delirium farming early on in the league. Forbidden Tomes did have their drop rate reduced, which is a little interesting, as well as the Hour of Divinity and Gilded Chalice unique relics also got reduced a decent amount. As always, the Atlas did get shifted around a little bit. There's a bunch of, you know, maps being removed, a bunch of maps added. Pretty standard stuff at this point, nothing really crazy there. And now let's get to the biggest one. Transfigured gems. We've been looking for a meta rebalance for a very long time. This is the thing that people have been asking for forever, and GG genuinely has figured out a real fix to this, in my opinion. Because I'm going to go against the grain a little bit, and all of these people wanting like massive buffs and massive nerfs to different abilities and such, the longer the time has gone on and the more that I've thought about it, the more unrealistic it is, and the more silly it is to even want those kinds of things. This solution is way better, with one major downside. The idea is that now, instead of having alt quality gems, instead of having helmet enchants, instead of having any of this stuff, transfigured gems are going to be ones that give you basically like a different way to use the skill. Like for the Firestorm one, for example, one version of Firestorm, which is going to be a different version of the gem, will have only meteors, and one version of the gem will have only the small meteors. So big meteors only in one and small meteors only in the other one. This makes it so that you can have basic, easy versions of the main skills and still have these cool paths that you can go down that are essentially new skills, but they're just modified versions of it. Essentially what alt quality gems should have always been. These, however, are obtained through the Labyrinth. Labyrinth helmet enchants and all this stuff is gone, and you get these by taking the gems into the Labyrinth, and at the Divine Font at the very end, they give you some options to either turn them into transfigured gems, add quality, experience, or sacrifice them for more treasure chests. Now, on top of this, 90% of these patch notes are just the changes to these gems, the base gems, that is, not even the transfigured gems. We don't even know what's coming with the transfigured gems at this point. They said they might have like hundreds of them. They said they're just going to keep going at it and get as many as they can in. The vendor recipe for turning a level 20 gem into a 20 quality gem, level 1, has been removed. So no more of that, like, you know, leveling up 5 or 6 of your main skill in your offhand to transform them into the others. None of that anymore. You don't have to worry about that. All of the original alt qualities have been completely removed. So if you used any of those previously, probably some version of them will exist in the new transfigured versions of the gems. However, alt qualities are gone, and when you log in, they're going to be completely deleted. So unlucky. Another notable change here is that the Grand Spectrum unique jewels no longer drop from the chest at the end. They drop at those little chests throughout the lab, meaning that the price of these is going to go through the roof. So just assume that those gems don't exist anymore, if we're going to be honest. Another big change that's happening is that Heist is essentially getting pretty much completely reworked. One of the big things about Heist was the fact that, you know, the alt quality gems were the main reason that you would go in there. Now, instead of there being alt quality gems, there's going to be better stacks of currency. All of the blueprints are all the same. The like results that you get at the end are all just from a random pool. And on top of that, they have reworked a bunch of the, like, you know, uniques and the replica uniques and those kinds of things. And I think added some more. I'm not 100% certain on that one. We're going to have to see if Heist is going to be worthwhile. I probably will test out some Heist farming at some point this league. And if it is good, I'll probably make a dedicated Heist build again, since I'm like the Heist guy at this point. So we'll see about that. I don't exactly know, but we will see. They did change a lot of these like alt use jewels that kind of existed that changed the way that certain ones of these skills worked. They're pretty much all kind of gone now, and those are probably going to be built into the alt quality or transfigured gems. There are a lot of these skill gem changes. There's a ton. I'm going to quickly jump through some interesting ones that I have found. I'm not going to go through all of these. It would literally be like a 4-hour video, because the vast majority of these are kind of just whatever. I'm going to go through the list. I'm going to find ones that I think are interesting, and I'll mention them and tell you why I think they're interesting. That's going to be most of this. This is going to be most of the video. So if you don't care about the skill gem changes, just skip this little section. I'll have it like marked hopefully down at the bottom if I remember to. If you're not interested in any of this. We'll start with some of the minions here. So under Animate Guardian, the vast majority of the minions have been kind of simplified. They no longer have this like percentage increased maximum minion life. Like if we look at the golems, they don't have this increased maximum minion life. They just have it built into their, you know, like the unit itself now. So that's quite a bit better than what I think it was before, where it was kind of just like, you know, they all have like weird percentages of increased health. It's just built into the actual minion now. Much simpler, much cleaner. I like the way that they're going about that. Arc is now gaining a little bit of base crit, which is pretty important. Base crit is the main thing that scales like chance to crit on most spells, but it is losing a lot of its just like base chance to shock enemies, as well as increased effect of lightning ailments. However, it does have the 15% more damage from hits and ailments for each remaining chain at all gem levels. And this is with hits and ailments. On top of that, quality is now giving +1 chain, which is pretty cool. Notably, ball lightning is getting a little bit of meters to radius. Radius on skills is actually pretty important. Like AoE and all of that is cool. It's good to scale it, but the actual like base size of the skill is very, very important for that. Ball lightning has this quality where you need to scale it large enough and make it move slow enough so that it can hit the maximum amount of ticks for how long the projectile lasts. It has a static amount of time that it lasts. It has a static amount of like how often it can hit. So what you need to do is make sure that one single enemy is getting hit by all of those, and base meters to radius definitely will help with that. Hopefully this is enough to make it worthwhile. Now, the same thing here is happening with Blade Blast. One of the big nerfs that happened to Blade Blast originally was the fact that they just absolutely giga nerfed the AoE size of it, right? Like the actual radius of it. So I don't exactly know how this is going to tie into the normal way that Blade Blast works. We'll have to see once we get like the full gems and all of that. However, adding meters to radius on the quality and potentially scaling the quality of it might make like a Blade Fall Blade Blast, like BFBB, pretty decent. What better time for me to get canceled again and make a Bladefall Blade Blast Inquisitor for Ultimatum League coming back? Am I right, boys? Let's get to it. All jokes aside, Blade Blast might be good again, depending on how much quality you can scale, and with the change that happened to Ashes, we'll see about that. Blade Vortex no longer has crit scaling for each blade. However, it does deal a little bit extra damage at top level, and quality now provides hit rate for each blade, meaning that I think that a non-crit Poison Blade Vortex might be pretty good here. It already was okay last league, or this league, whatever you want to call it. I know that I think, was it Local Hall that made the video for that? I'll probably be working on some kind of Poison Blade Vortex thing at some point here, we'll see. But another big change is happening to Bladefall. No longer leaves 50% fewer lingering blades in the ground if you don't cast a spell yourself, meaning you can potentially automate this. It doesn't have increased critical strike chance anymore, which is a pretty big nerf if you're going crit. But if you're going like Poison with no crit, it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't have 6% less damage per volley. It doesn't have reduced critical strike chance per volley, and it no longer has a critical strike tag. It does get one additional volley with quality now, though. Blast Rain is getting some plus arrow here in the quality. Notably, Blast Rain, you'll probably see a lot of the lightning arrow builds, including my own, using Blast Rain as one of the like main trigger abilities on Mana Forged arrows now, especially while leveling. This having better quality is decent. I don't know how long that'll last into the game, but look forward to that most likely being pretty decent. Blazing Salvo AoE is okay. It'll make overlaps work a little bit better, but not really a ton to think about there. 0.2 meters radius is okay for that quality. Bone Shatter, oddly enough, as far as I can tell, got buffed. It's getting more damage per trauma now with the quality, so cool. I guess we'll have to see what the alt quality Bone Shatters are, because one of the biggest damage changes that Bone Shatter got is the alt quality version of the Bone Shatter, scaling it with like Ashes and stuff. Ashes got massively nerfed. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. We'll have to see what the alt qualities of Bone Shatter are before we start talking about that. As a League Start build, it should still work perfectly fine. Most people playing League Start Bone Shatter weren't using Ashes and didn't really care about alt quality Bone Shatter, so it will still be perfectly fine for a League Start build, but scaling it further might be questionable now. Brand Recall is actually getting increased cooldown recovery rate, which is big for like Arma brand recall builds. Like you might have seen the one that Jung talks about every once in a while. I think I also remember seeing him do something with like trigger bots and Arma brand recall or something. I don't know, but this is pretty decent. Instead of it being like increased attachment range, brand recall having cooldown recovery rate, pretty good. Cleave has had radius buffed per nearby enemy. Pog. So Cyclone's getting changed a decent amount. The first hit no longer deals like significantly less damage, which is cool. You don't gain stages anymore. You don't lose stages anymore. You don't get meters to radius per stage or have maximum stages in any kind. So it kind of is just like it's full size immediately. The quality gives you 10% more movement speed though on base Cyclone. We'll have to see what the alt qualities of this do, but 10% increased AoE per melee strike range is decent. It was 8 before, so I'm not exactly sure how this is going to end up, but Cyclone no longer having like these weird stage things is kind of nice. Decoy Totem quality is giving 20% more totem life, so if there's a way to scale totem life, you know, with like the new stuff that happened, I don't even remember the name of the support gem, but pretty good. Detonate Dead is getting a chance to detonate additional corpse. This is pretty strong. Discharge is getting more area of effect per charge consumed at all gem levels, previously being 20% increased. And it's also getting quality provides 10% chance to deal damage without removing charges. So we'll have to see how this works out. It could be pretty interesting. We'll see what the alt quality versions of Discharge does as well, but Discharge might be pretty good. However, we'll find out later that Ralakesh's got completely destroyed for Discharge. So, you know, Divine Ire has kind of been normalized. Essentially what they've done is they've gotten rid of all of the weird extra stacking mechanic that you used to get. Like if you were fighting like a rare mob or something like that, you would get like extra stacks, or fighting a unique mob, you get extra stacks. They've reduced the stages to 10. They've increased the damage. So say previously you got like 100% damage per stack and there were like 20 stacks. Now there's 10 stacks and you get like 240% more damage. So it's a pretty big buff in damage. It also doesn't have less damage while channeling, so there's a pretty decent chance that Divine Ire could be pretty good. However, it's a channeling ability, meaning that it's really bad for self-cast most of the time, but Divine Ire totems maybe make a return, who knows. Dual Strike is getting a super weird change where with quality, you're gonna have like 90% more damage with hits and ailments against enemies that are on full life, I don't know how this is gonna work, but I could see some like weird bleed stuff going on with this. But 90% more damage against enemies with full life is kind of a meme, but I thought it was enough to just say something about. Fireball has been normalized a decent amount. It no longer like gains size as it goes further. It's just a larger size immediately, which is kind of nice. We don't have to worry about that anymore. They're trying to turn Flame Dash into a damaging ability. You'll see that whenever I cover like the alt quality gems and stuff, like the new ones. I don't know about this one, but there's like a new version of Flame Dash which dashes out and then immediately back to where you were, and it like causes it to do more. It's weird, but we'll see. Herald of Ash quality actually got nerfed pretty hard. Normal quality on Herald of Ash was actually pretty powerful a lot of the time, especially if you were doing like a fizz to fire conversion build. It's now base burning damage of an additional 5% of overkill damage. Not as nice as the 15% fire damage. That's a little bit unfortunate. Ice Nova, in my opinion, has been gutted. They made it so that most of the like cool effects that you could do with Ice Nova, where it would like work off of frost bolts and stuff like that, has been completely removed. I'm assuming this is going to be added back with the new alt qualities for these. However, like base Ice Nova just seems a lot worse now. The damage is higher, and it has better effectiveness of added damage, but it's lost the ability to essentially like double the amount of damage that you would do with this. Hopefully this comes back in some of the alt qualities, but for right now, as far as we know, Ice Nova got gutted. So the steel skills actually all got some pretty interesting changes. Lancing Steel notably says quality now causes the skill to fire +1 projectiles instead of providing 0 to 20 increase in Pale effect. I actually think this might be a nerf to its damage. +1 projectiles is nice, but it already fired a lot of projectiles, and 20% increased in Pale effect is actually a decent amount of damage. All the steel skills got massively changed besides this one. I think this one's probably going to function mostly as normal, but we'll have to see. The new lightning arrow quality is actually really good. This is like a decent buff, I think. +2 additional enemies hit near the target for quality is pretty solid. We'll see what the alt quality ones are as well. Penance Brand has basically been completely reworked. Penance Brand was this really weird ability that you had to scale a whole bunch of weird effects now. It seems like Penance Brand now is you apply it to an enemy, it charges up, and then it explodes and disappears. This is kind of cool. The damage numbers are insane. I don't exactly know what to think about this, but it's 2,500 to 3,800 damage, previously 170 to 254, and has 570% effectiveness of added damage. I don't know what to think about this, to be honest with you. This could be... I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about this at all, to be honest with you. I think Penance Brand will probably be used in some manner, maybe. That's a lot of damage that they've changed on this. Hopefully it's good, because I always did like Penance Brand as an ability. Notably, Power Siphon says now fires projectiles at nearby enemies instead of firing 4 to 7 additional projectiles. So now it should auto target as far as I can tell, so you shouldn't need to like worry about them not hitting. This probably makes Power Siphons clear a little bit more consistent, especially early on, but not 100% certain if this makes it better or worth playing. I have no idea. Righteous Fire got a pretty big change. This basically brings it back to how it was before. You'll probably need to wait on Pox to tell you whether or not it's okay, good, bad, nothing, but it now deals 70% of your maximum life and energy shield as base fire damage instead of 35%. I think this is most likely going to make it worse early and maybe the same later. I did the math earlier, and it would require you to have 7,000 total life and energy shield to get this same number here. I'm assuming that potentially this number will scale more as you level up the gem more, maybe like as you get more gem levels. So maybe stacking life and energy shield will be more worthwhile, which is good for Inquisitors anyways. So I don't know if this is a buff or nerf. Wait for Pox to tell you, essentially. As far as I can tell, base shattering still got gutted. It doesn't consume steel shards anymore, but it doesn't say anything about not having Call of Steel anymore. It doesn't grant steel wards, so you don't get any of the like the block chance for projectiles or anything like that. It no longer has any base duration because it doesn't give you those stats anymore. It's always going to fire all of the projectiles, and it doesn't have projectiles deal up to 50% more damage with hits per steel shard consumed at the start of their movement. I just think this is overall a pretty big nerf to Shattering Steel in its base form. It kind of feels like they absolutely gutted this ability, because you're losing that 50% more damage with hits per steel shard consumed at the start of movement, meaning it's losing most of its damage. A very strange change. I don't know what to think about this one. Hopefully the alt qualities do something interesting, because this is very weird to me. Spark quality is now giving you +2 additional projectiles, pretty decent. It doesn't have increased projectile speed on it anymore, so that is a little bit bad because projectile speed is pretty good, but 2 additional projectiles is also pretty good. Now let's talk about splitting steel. So we talked about the previous 2. However, this one in particular, and the reason why I was particular about the previous gem not having Call of Steel is that this one specifically says no longer consumes steel shards or grants Call of Steel. It no longer has projectiles which have split deal 35% less damage, and it now has a 40% base chance to impale instead of 60, but it also has an attack speed multiplier of 90% of base. So let me try to explain this a little bit. So it's not going to use steel shards anymore, meaning it's not going to consume them. It doesn't grant Call of Steel, which means that it's not going to use steel shards at all. It's not going to grant Call of Steel. So my assumption is just that it's going to do what it would normally do if you have steel shards, and you're never going to have to use Call of Steel with it. It also no longer has projectiles which have split deal 35% less damage, meaning that the splits are going to do more damage now, but it has a little bit less chance to impale, and it's basically getting like a 10% overall damage nerf because it's getting an attack speed multiplier now, which it did not have previously. I have no idea how to feel about this, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think this is a huge buff, and it might make it so that like league starting splitting steel might be insanely strong now. But on the other hand, I kind of want to wait until I see the gem. I just kind of want to wait, if I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't get too hyped about this, but it looks pretty good to me. Storm Rain is getting each arrow can fire +1 beam, which is pretty good. You'll probably notice, at least in mine and probably most other people's lightning arrow guides for League Start, that you're going to be seeing Storm Rain in there now, so this is pretty good. I'll talk more about that when I have my like video talking about lightning arrow and the League Start video that I'm going to do for it, so you'll hear about that then. So interestingly, another big one is Summon Raging Spirits. Summon Raging Spirits is getting basically the damage where it just like deals more damage over time is just being baked into the actual spirit itself, which is good, and it's getting a 30% chance to spawn an additional minion. I don't exactly know how useful this will be, but what that means is that with like 20% quality, you have a 30% chance to summon an extra one. With 40% quality, you'd have 60. I don't know how useful this will be. I don't know if it'll make it so that you don't need Unleash, but probably nothing changes here. It is nerfing the movement speed, which is kind of bad, so that is unfortunate, but on League Start, you probably wouldn't have had movement speed on these anyways. What is an absolutely crazy change to me is the fact that Tornado Shot is now just getting the helmet enchant secondary projectile just built into the quality. Like, you're just going to have what was previously like a 15 or 20 divine enchant or something like that. It's just built into the normal quality now. So yeah, Tornado Shot buffed. Okay, cool. Or not buffed, but like made more available to have the crazy enchant. So maybe you can do it earlier or something. I don't know how to feel about this. Vortex notably has been pretty massively changed at the base gem. Now the base version of it is no longer instant. It has a cast time, but it doesn't have a cooldown time. The damage has been massively reduced. It can't be cast off of frost bolts anymore, and it can't proc off of multiple frost bolts at the same time. So what this means is that potentially you could do some like cast on crit vortex something, or you could scale it with cast speed or something like that. But for most use cases, I actually kind of feel like this is a nerf for leveling early. I think this kind of kills early game feel of Cold Dot. Maybe. I'm not 100% certain, because like you're going to have to cast it now, so you can't put it on left click anymore. You're going to need what I assume is going to be an alt quality that'll still do all those other things. But I don't know. It seems kind of strange that they would essentially nerf Cold Dot in this way for early leveling, but who knows, I might be wrong there. And that is finally it for all of the skills. I looked through most of the Vol skill gem changes, and there's not really a ton in here that like jumps out at me. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 in here that are pretty decent, but I personally didn't notice anything. So if someone finds something that's cool, but I personally did not. Same thing pretty much goes for the support gem changes. I looked through a lot of these, and I didn't really find anything like massively crazy. It just seems like they took a lot of the just objectively better alt quality supports and just made them the normal ones, is what it kind of seems like. So one big thing is that I don't know that we're getting any of the alt quality support gems. Like, I don't think we're getting any weird different alt quality support gems, so some of them might be removed and I'm not realizing that. So that could be a nerf in various cases, but I don't exactly know 100%. So what I would say is check to see if any builds that you are going to be running have alt quality support gems that are important, because if that's the case, those might not exist anymore. Chieftain has made it so that your totems also get the explodey chance, which I guess is kind of cool. The passive tree mastery that gave you like increased accuracy against marked enemies and such actually just didn't work. So I don't exactly know how this is going to function, but maybe they just grant just generic more accuracy now, because yeah, previously they just didn't work, which is cool. It makes you wonder how many things on the tree just straight up don't work, right? Ghost busting got nerfed pretty hard. The destructive play Atlas Keystone, if you remember, you know, you go in, you have to wait for the Maven to spawn all the additional bosses before you kill them. Now you can just kill the boss instantly and not have to worry about it. So that's pretty cool. And now let's talk about the nerfs. A lot of the big meta uniques got nerfed. There are more builds than I can count at this point that use like Heat Shiver plus Comb Spirit plus an Ashes or a Replica Dragon Fang all at the same time. Those builds got dumpstered. So let's talk about it. Ashes of the Stars no longer provides 10 to 20% increased reservation efficiency of skills. It's just not on the item anymore. Notably, it is still going to give a bunch of quality. So you will probably still find this amulet to be very powerful, especially with a lot of the new alt qualities on a lot of the gems being insanely strong. So we'll see. We'll have to see all of that plays out, but Ashes lost a lot of that reservation efficiency. I always kind of thought that Ashes had too many stats. Like, I thought it was just too good of an amulet. So this was kind of expected by me eventually, but the fact that they just straight removed all the reservation efficiency is pretty crazy. I'm very glad that Heat Shiver just got essentially deleted now. 30% of cold damage as extra fire against frozen enemies instead of 100%. It's probably still going to be pretty good, but yeah, not like so oppressively good now that you use it instead of anything else, which is very nice. Replica Dragon Fang just got overall stat reduces. It's just worse now, but it's probably still going to be fine. And Comb Spirit, the Rage Gloves got basically it's reduced to a third effectiveness when it comes to generating rage, which is pretty bad. On top of that, Ralakesh's Impatience now counts as you having the maximum number of frenzy charges and counts as you having a maximum number of power charges instead of like making minimum equal maximum, so you can't like do any like weird abuse with it anymore, which kind of makes me feel like the boots are kind of useless now, if I'm reading this correctly. They kind of lost their charm, but there was a lot of abuse cases there, so maybe that's the reason they did it. In one of the actually strangest changes that I've seen, Replica Perfect Form doesn't give dexterity, it doesn't give life, it doesn't give hollow palm technique, it also doesn't cause Flesh and Stone to have no reservation. It just now provides you versatile combatant, which is bad, and 20% chance to block attack damage. I'll be honest with you, I don't understand this at all. Replica Perfect Form. So let's look at this real quick. So it's losing this mod, it's losing this mod, it's losing this mod, and it's losing this mod. So all it's going to have is increased evasion, minus cold resist. Evasion rating is increased by overcapped cold resistance, and it's going to have like one of the worst keystone, Versatile Combatant, right, which is this here. Versatile Combatant gives you minus maximum chance to block attack and spell damage, and chance to block a spell damage for each 1% overcapped chance to block attack damage. So maybe at best, this might just provide a random build like 40% spell block. Maybe that's cool, but I don't know. I personally can't see anybody using this chess piece anymore. It's just a very strange change to me. Like, if they would have left the Flesh and Stone in there, or they would have left the hollow palm technique, or they would have left the life, or just something else, I could have seen it, but I'm not sure how I feel about it now. Under item balance, this is basically a standard change because I don't think Hinakora's locks are making it into the main game, but they can no longer see corrupting an item at the altar of corruption, meaning that you can't get free double corrupted mage bloods anymore. Rest in peace. The Maven releases all bosses at once is back, which is pretty cool. And they've changed a bunch of these like heist bases now. The most interesting one is this simplex amulet. This is pretty crazy because it now has -2 prefixes and I think -1 suffix, and it has 100% increased explicit modifier magnitudes, meaning that like if your prefix is 89 life and you have 20 quality on it, you can have like 200 plus life on an amulet pretty easily now, and then also get like, I don't know, 80 resistances or like 100 stats or all kinds of crazy stuff. Quantity, like 20 quantity now on an amulet. On top of that, you can also get +2 to gems now. If you get that +1, 100% increase should be +2. This is probably the best amulet base in the game now, I think. It's pretty insane. For just random crafting amulets. The rest of these are pretty decent, but nothing crazy. Ruthless specific changes, Omega Lol. They changed the Foundry map boss. He's now going to like drop the Corpse Rain skill or whatever it was before, and a whole bunch of other stuff. The Keurig League mods are kind of bad. Ultimatum and Expedition is good. Ambush is okay. The rest of these are pretty rough. It'll probably be mostly Ultimatum, mostly Expedition that people will be doing. They put in some quality of life, which is pretty good. You can split items now when you are like trading with a vendor or trading with another person. And beyond that, they fixed a bunch of bugs. Most of these don't matter, and that is about it. I know that wasn't as short as I was hoping that it would be, but that's as good as I could realistically condense all of those skill changes. As I said previously, if you skip all of the skill change stuff that I talked about, it's a pretty short video. There's not really a lot to talk about, but lots of skill changes, and we're going to be getting like hundreds of new alt version gems that we're going to be getting here. I'll probably have to make an entire video talking about all of those, but for now, that's the patch notes condensed as best as I can. And remember, boys, if you enjoy this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in raid class, and I will see you guys in the next video.